All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the History and Philosophy Department podcast. It's been a few weeks because we had break, but we now have two guests with us today, Abby Piper and Abby Silon, and both of them wrote really good papers for History 499, the Capstone seminar. That's a class that we teach a lot, like every semester, and of course, every history major has to take that class. So I thought it might make sense to come in, have them come in and talk to us about what they did that helped them write such good papers. So first of all, Abby P., could you tell us, what was your paper about?
My paper was about, obviously, Korea and U.S. relations.
Right, that's what I taught on.
And about U.S. diplomacy with Korea during Pak Chung-hee's Yushin Constitution.
Right.
And about Ambassador Philip Habib and his interactions and discussing with America the Yushin.
Excellent. Excellent. And Abby S., what did you do?
So I also focused on foreign policy between U.S. and South Korea, and I focused on Henry Kissinger's response to the axe murder incident of 1976.
Okay, excellent. So one thing we talked about in class was, the importance of picking a topic. So I imagine for both of you, I mean, you came in immediately knowing you were going to do the axe murder incident, and you knew you were going to do Philip Habib. I remember you had the Philip Habib t-shirt and all the Philip Habib posters, right? Seriously, right? Had you heard of these people or incidents before you took the class?
No.
So how did you come to choose those topics?
Well, I first looked at an era that I'd be interested in.
Okay. Right.
So I knew I'd probably want something within the 60s or 70s. And from there, just going and trying to read documents. Like, Fruce really helped. And I just read tons of documents over Korea. Mm-hmm. Any relations, any talking back and forth. And I noticed a trend of there was a lot of communication with the Department of State and Philip Habib. And that's how I developed the topic.
Excellent. And I just want to make sure, those documents, are they primary or secondary sources? Primary sources. Excellent. So just to repeat that, because this is I think the big challenge for people taking 499 is choosing a topic. Is you started with something you knew that you were interested in, and then you used that to narrow down documents, which you then dove into till you found something that would work. Right. So very good. Abby Silon, how did you come to the topic of the axe murderer?
So I knew, well, actually when I came in, I didn't know anything about South Korea in the history. So I just kind of started very general and kind of focused. I was like, okay, well, I want more of like a foreign policy thing. I had a bunch of different options. One of them was funeral practices, I think. Right,
I remember we talked about that earlier.
So I tried hard with that one and did some research. So definitely start off picking a couple different topics, and primary sources is the first thing you want to look for, and do research on that, and then kind of narrowed it down from there.
Excellent. And just really quick, what was the axe murder incident?
So basically, I'm trying to summarize it. It was a altercation between the North Korean and South Korean officers at the DMZ, and it ended, and it had American officers in there as well, and 2 American officers were murdered by North Korean soldiers. Right.
Yeah, and I mean this was serious, right? What did it almost lead to?
Basically, we were trying not to start a war.
Right, yeah. I mean, this could have led to war. Yeah. I mean, this was serious stuff. So, excellent. So that's how you picked a topic. And I like that Abby Silon noted that she had a little difficulty. She started with one topic, but early on realized by looking at the documents, I can't do this topic. Yes. Maybe it wasn't interesting. There weren't enough documents. And then shifted to one that was more interesting. Now, and both of you used Fruce, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So Fruce, for our listeners, stands for Foreign Relations of the United States. These documents are selected diplomatic documents. They are online and searchable. So that is something that makes your life, I think, quite a bit easier.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I have a video about how to use them, so if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to give you that link over how to use them. I was going to ask, was that video helpful? But I mean, what other answer can you give? But yes. Right? Sorry. I mean, it's kind of an awkward question. I'll have to ask later, how could it be more helpful? That's an easier question to answer. So both of you wrote really good papers, in part because you chose good topics, but you didn't stop there. You did good research. So could you tell us a little bit about your research process and any tips you might have for people working on that?
I first started with, like, you have to start as soon as possible, I would say. And that's looking at, a lot of people, I think, go towards secondary sources.
Right.
Which is fine. You can use that to then look for whatever primary sources they used. And you need to go look for those primary sources, start reading about that, and that could lead to you changing your topic eventually. But there's so many different things. You can read books, there's online sources, we have microfilm if you want to do anything for like local.
Right.
Here, Pascal, you can get books. But also, most part is taking notes on everything that you read about, even if later it's not very important, you don't really need it, but keeping track of all the research that you're doing. And taking time to actually read it, and then going back later and saying, was this useful? Do I need this information still?
Right.
So,
Yeah, excellent. Abby Silon?
So kind of along the same lines, use the resources that are given to you, Pascal, the library, the internet's a big one, and just keep diving more into what you're reading or looking at. So, I got onto Fruth, got on their website, and then kept going deeper and deeper until I found a more narrow topic, because you start off kind of broad, knowing, so like foreign relations was what I wanted to look at, and then I focused on one person, Henry Kissinger, so you just kind of have to like narrow down on your topic, and it's a good way to just keep looking through the sources, because you might see something that you missed the first time, and definitely taking notes and stuff like that.
Yeah, excellent. And so, you can't, I think students kind of feel like they want to become experts in the secondary material before they dive into the primary, and that's impossible. Like, if you were to read one book on Henry Kissinger, like a complete biography of Henry Kissinger, that would take at least a week, I think, to go through carefully, and then it maybe wouldn't help you that much, right? That would be kind of the issue. So, and that's where talking to, I think, your professors could help, because we can tell you, oh, not much is written on this. And I think that's one reason why I try to steer you in that direction, because I'm like, I'm familiar with the secondary sources, not much on that aspect.
And with research, you should try to start narrowing down what you want. Like, from first reading Fruce, I was reading all kinds of documents from different decades.
Right.
And then I started narrowing down when I wanted, and eventually it became a year's time span, roughly, of what my whole paper was. So,
And even then you wrote a very long paper. So, I mean, and that's something, again, I think students are afraid, oh, I'm not going to have enough information. It's like, no, if you pick the right topic and you pick a good primary source, your problem is not going to be word minimum, your problem is going to be word maximum.
Yes, because I could have written a lot more.
That's always the thing. It's just narrowing down. And I just want to point out, so you need some basic idea of the time period, and you have limited time, so that's why it helps to do something you know something about the 1970s, right? So you can focus on that. That lets you focus your material. You don't have to do so much secondary research. So that's very important. So, and I need to point out one thing I would do as an undergrad is I would go just to the library, check out like 20 books, and I'd be like so excited, and I'd put it on my desk, I'm like, I can't read all these. So I need to be more narrow, and that's where you go with the primary sources. So that's for the research, right? And I want to stress for our students, this, as you can see from what Abby are saying, is that this isn't just a step-by-step process. You go back and forth.
Yes.
You start with a topic, do some research, go back and reconsider your topic. It's not a step-by-step process. So you're probably going to start writing while you're doing research.
Yes.
But what tips do you have for writing?
First, I would say when you start writing, using quotes is great, because you don't want to plagiarize. And I think people are hesitant to use quotes because they think, oh, I don't look as smart maybe, or because they're not writing it in their original words, such a thing. And using quotes can really explain a certain thing specifically, but then you need to go and analyze what that quote is. That's probably the most important. You can't just quote something and then have it in there and have no explanation.
Quotes don't speak for themselves. Yes. We have to help analyze.
Also for writing, you might want to set your own deadlines for yourself. The professor may have deadlines for you, but you can set your own deadlines. Say, I want this much written by this time. Start putting footnotes in as soon as possible. I saw other students when doing peer readings, and they didn't have footnotes, so a lot of their paper felt kind of all over the place.
Right.
I started doing footnotes immediately. If I had a source and I knew I liked it, I started writing with that source and footnoting. And you can first make an outline for what you want to do, and it can be very basic outline. My first outline, just how many sections I wanted roughly to have.
Right.
And when you're first writing, don't start with what your opening paragraph would be.
Right.
Because as you write, you're going to develop your thesis. It's kind of hard to have a thesis and then basically through your paper, you'll be trying to justify that thesis because that's what you're already set on. But your thesis as you write can change.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really important to have a clear thesis statement. You never want in a presentation, at the end of the presentation, for the professor reviewing your paper to say, what was your thesis? That means that you've got some stuff, but it's not really making sense. That's a problem. So, Abby, yes, what would you say? What's your tip for writing?
So for me, I have to be in the right headspace to write. So I want a quiet area.
Right.
And always kind of go back to the same area because I feel like that kind of puts you in the zone in a way. So pick a living room, your bedroom, a quiet space in the library. Like, that'll definitely help.
Right.
And quotes are your friends, so don't be scared of quotes.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
we want evidence.
Yes, and
Show,
Dr.
don't tell.
Rausch, you actually, helped me realize that whenever you said to start picking quotes from primary sources and then go back and analyze them. And that's a great way to, like, start your paper and figure out what you want to do. Because before, every time I had written a paper, like Abby Piper said, I didn't want to add a bunch of quotes, then look like I didn't contribute enough to the paper. So definitely start working with quotes and primary sources and outlines. Definitely help. So don't just, like, you want an outline to help your mind get organized too. Right. So you can also, like, writing it down on paper, like, really does help.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And how did you get yourself, like, I'm just curious, like, how did you motivate yourself to write? I think that's an issue students have.
I had a lot of spare time waiting. I was actually waiting to, like, leave school. So I would actually go to the library.
Oh, excellent.
And I had a seat on the 3rd floor of the library where I always sat and knew what, like, that's how I knew when to write.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because I had to write this. And that's part of my motivation is I need to write this because I have deadlines that I need to meet. I have other classes, but I really want to write this now because once you start to get researching, you'll be shocked by how interested you can become in this. It's kind of funny because at first I was like, oh, this is going to be so frustrating and tiring. And then you actually become interested in it. And you're like, oh, I really want to actually write about this.
Oh, good
and so
deal.
you can motivate yourself in that way.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, so I am that person that when I sit down, I'm like, oh gosh, I really don't want to start writing this. And I, sit there for a minute and just kind of, my brain's like always scattered. So it takes me a good 5 minutes to realize, like, okay, just start writing something. Start anywhere, it doesn't matter where, and just go with that thought and keep going. And then definitely just have some coffee beside you.
Very good.
Stay in the zone and
I understand.
I would try and not take a lot of breaks because, like I said, like, I like getting in the zone, and then once you're there for a long time, and just, like, drink some coffee, definitely, take breaks, but not like 20-minute breaks. Take a good 5-minute break, relax, and then get back into it.
Excellent. Yeah. And I know one thing, it sounds like you don't have the same issue I have, but you remember how oftentimes I would have requirements. I say 500-word paper, 1,000-word paper, because sometimes that's what I have to do is sometimes there's a paper I just have to grind it out.
Yeah.
And I'll tell myself, you're not doing anything until you write 500 words. Yeah. And then I have to sit at my computer and write 500 words before I do anything else. And then for me, once I get on the roll, though, I don't want to stop. So I maybe have to do that 2 days, but then after that, I'll just write the paper just straight out because I've gotten started. That's how I kind of deal with that. But I know that's one thing that people have issues with. So I've been asking you questions, but is there any kind of general advice you would give our students?
Going back to what we were just talking about with writing, when you're writing, I feel like a lot of times I would start writing and I'd be like, oh, this is horrible, and just kind of keep going back and editing. But don't beat yourself up. Just keep writing.
Mm-hmm.
You can always go back. If you have a flow going, just keep going.
Yeah.
Don't worry about how it sounds. Like your professor's not sitting there.
You can fix grammar later.
You.
Don't worry about
it. You can just keep writing. Also, talk to your professor. Get advice from your professor about your topic, about research. You can talk to the other professors if they're available and, would be willing to give you advice. Also, talk to other students. And you probably have friends in class and see what they think of your topic or how it comes off when they read it. Would they understand what you're trying to say? And later on, when you have to do presentation, practice your presentation.
Excellent.
That's probably a big one. A lot of people are nervous about that.
Right.
We've talked to kids who are going to be taking 499, and their biggest thing is they're scared about having the presentation portion. They're scared about which professor they're going to get. But if you're confident in your topic, which I think is the biggest piece of advice, know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because once they ask you questions, you should be able to answer those questions, and you won't be as nervous if you know what your topic is.
Exactly.
Really.
I have to point out that, when both of you emphasize primary sources, myself and other professors have brought primary sources and said, why didn't you look at this? This was in the library. I'm just making up a name, but it's like, you're studying Andrew Jackson. The library has Andrew Jackson papers.
Yeah.
Why do Andrew Jackson's papers not show up in your paper? So and if you've done your homework and you've talked to professors, you will not run into that issue. So don't worry. As long as you're prepared, the presentations, I thought all the presentations basically went well. Like, I don't think there was no, we didn't have any train wrecks or anything like that. I felt like, believe it or not, by the way, we're also nervous about the presentations. So it's kind of funny. How about you, Abby S? What's your view?
So my struggle throughout this whole thing was trusting myself. And I would tell that to other students, is to definitely trust yourself. Don't be scared of the material. People make mistakes, but definitely just keep trying and don't give up. And definitely, like Abby Piper said, ask for help. We have all the professors here that would be glad to help you. The library, your friends, it doesn't hurt to ask for help. Yeah, and the writing center too.
Oh, right. Oh, very good.
Yes.
I mean, and one thing I would just point out is, it's all of your professors, we were there.
Yeah.
Right? We had to go through the exact same process. Writing, I try and tell people, is a skill. You develop it by doing it. And so, both of you mentioned the importance of just writing. That's how you get better at writing, is you write.
Yes.
You get better at research by doing research. I mean, I think we talked about how you do the introductions, and I threw one together, I can't remember, and if you're like, wow, what?
Yeah, we were really impressed by that.
I'm like, because I do this all the time. I used to it. So it was just funny. So my point is, that maybe seemed impressive, but all of you can do it. Is if you the more you do it, the quicker and easier it gets. So one thing, and I hadn't thought of this question, I'll go ahead and throw it out there. What do you think professors could do to make History 499 better for students? Maybe I shouldn't ask that question.
That is a tough question.
Well, I think with our 499, and I think it would help with other students too, is deadlines. And I know when you're in the class, you're like, for students, you're like, oh gosh, this is a lot of deadlines, a lot of writing, but if you do a little bit along the way, it will help, and not just to wait till the last minute. Or not the last minute, but even the last month, even, just to say, oh, turn in a rough draft here, and then your final.
Right.
That kind of is scary. So if you have deadlines to write 1,000 words and then 2,000 and add on like we did, I think that would definitely help the students.
Yeah. Not to roast other professors, but to have your level of organization.
Oh, my God.
You have a lot of organization and not even just that, but also standards. I think you have really high, good standards, and that in a way motivates me to do better.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, just having simple things like 500 words, that's a great way to just start.
Okay.
Because a lot of times it's hard to know how much to write, where to start writing, and I think just a lot of kids just need encouragement.
Right. Okay, that's helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of kids are sensitive nowadays, and I think just simple things like, "Oh no, you're doing good, but fix this." I mean, I don't need it, but other kids I know do.
Okay, that's something I need to be careful about.
Because you can still be tough, but Yeah, I think a lot of kids are they're scared. They're really scared to take the class. Which is funny because I was dreading it. I was like, since freshman year, I was like, I'm going to have to do this. And then I took it and I was like, that was so easy. Well, you trained you treated the class well, though. I mean, it's kind of a healthy fear.
Yeah.
In a sense. It's like, okay, I know I got to be serious about this. That's very helpful to know, because I think that's one thing I tend to neglect sometimes is the human side. I just don't think of this as how scary this is. It's just like, so that's very helpful. And I think of ways to make it less scary while still having standards, which is always kind of the balance point. And that's the art of teaching, is trying to figure out how to get that. Well, good deal. Well, that's all the questions I have. Do you have anything you want to say before I let you go and have lunch?
No, we're good.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Abby, for letting us talk to you today. And I hope for our listeners, you all learned something. Good luck when you take $4.99.